Look at Ghana. We have a monetary policy built on a flexible exchange rate. And our exposure, being a liberal economy, is to the whole world and not just one country. So we have investors from the UK, investors from the USA, investors from Germany, investors from China, etc., etc., etc. But we all recall that during COVID, and of course compounded by Russia, Ukraine, advanced economies increased their rates to contain inflation. And by increasing their rates, their instruments became more attractive. So investors from all over the world who had invested in Ghana largely found other attractive markets. And we suffered significant reversals. As a result of this, our city suffered greatly. As a result of the spending on COVID, about 21 billion Ghana cedis. We didn't have the money. We had to borrow and borrow to the extent that our fiscal deficit was around 13% of GDP. And so even though we saved lives, it was at a great fiscal cost to the economy. So faced with these challenges, we had to reset our economy. We had to go to the IMF for a fund-supported program. And let me say, when we talk about IMF program, it is our program. It is a program developed by Ghana, what we call PCPEG, Post-COVID-19 Program for Economic Growth. And the IMF is providing financial support. And so these are things we have to do ourselves. And this is why I keep saying that, so if we don't have somebody holding the stick over our head, it means we can't do things by ourselves. And this is why we all must work together to ensure that beyond IMF, we sustain the efforts. We take ownership of our economy. The discipline that we need to be able to abide by that so that we can grow our economy in line with our president's vision of Ghana beyond aid. And we can do this. So since joining the IMF, things have changed. And I said yesterday that it is not easy to join an IMF program and pass the test of the program. Because we know our recent history as a country. When we went through an IMF program and failed the test, the most recent being 2016. But since we started implementing the program, we met all the prior conditions. The program approved by the board led to a release of $600 million to Ghana. We did our first review. The IMF released $600 million to Ghana. We are now going through the second review. By 28th June, the IMF board will meet over Ghana for our second review. And I can tell you, with all the indications, with all the work we have done in Ghana, we have met all the tests and we are going to pass the test, and the IMF will release another $360 million to Ghana by the 1st of July. What it means is that all the policies that we have to implement, we are implementing these policies, and the results are positive. Being an investor forum, I want to assure you that our economy is returning to stability. And what you need as investors is macro stability. For example, inflation is trending downwards, coming down from 54% by the end of 2022 54% inflation by the end of 2022. Today, in 14 months, we have more than half inflation to 23%. 23% is still high, and we are determined to drive it down further. We hope to end the year with an inflation rate of 15%, which is doable. If in 14 months inflation came down from 54% to 23%, as of the end of May, nothing will surprise me if we are able to meet our end 2024 year target of 15%. And we are determined by next year, 2025, to bring inflation further down to the single digit of 8%, as we had before COVID struck us. Secondly, our fiscals have improved significantly. The government that suspended the application of the fiscal responsibility law because we had to spend on COVID, leading to a 13% fiscal deficit. Today, we see a complete difference. Huge fiscal effort on the part of the Ghanaian people. Huge sacrifices on the part of the Ghanaian people. And therefore, primary surplus, which is the anchor of our fiscal policy, which stood at 4.3% deficit, primary balanced deficit of 4.3%, by the end of 2022, by the end of 2023, we brought it down to 0.3% surplus. This is a huge effort. And this year, we are determined to bring it further to 0.5 because of the extra spending we had to do, last year. And this year, we are determined to bring it to 0.5% surplus from 0.3%. Next year, we hope to achieve 1.5% surplus. So these are huge fiscal efforts we are making to restore the economy to stability. Debt accumulation. We are determined to bring our debt levels down, because one of the measures we had to implement was a debt restructuring program, seeking to restructure our debts with our official creditors, with our Euro bond holders, but even more with our domestic bond holders. And this was intended to bring our debts to sustainable levels. I told you, we borrowed and borrowed because we didn't have money to spend on COVID. And we also lost revenue as a result of the lockdown. Therefore, to bring debt levels down, again, will require huge efforts on government spending. And I'm happy to report that we are achieving successes in this respect, bringing our debt accumulation from over 84% to 74% by the end of 2022 and to 71% of GDP by the end of 2023. And we are determined to bring it further down to 55% of GDP by the end of 2028. Exchange rate. And this I know is of interest to many Ghanaians. I'll talk about the cedi to the dollar. Our exchange rate has been relatively stable, except over the last 2 months that we have seen accelerated depreciation. And I'll give you the data. The depreciation of the cedi by end 2022 was about 53%. 53% depreciation, because we suffered significant reversals and our cedi became weaker. 53%. By end 2023, we managed to stabilize the cedi to the extent that the entire 2023 recorded a depreciation of just 21.7%, coming down a year before of 53% depreciation. As I speak to you, year to date, the cedi has depreciated by 17%. And we understand why the cedi has depreciated by this much. Because market observers here know that the dollar has become stronger. The whole world is faced with a stronger dollar. And we are not isolated from this. Secondly, we see high cedi liquidity on our market because we've had to pay contractors so much. For example, year to date, we've already spent in total about 49 billion Ghana cedis. Same time last year, we did just about 39 billion. And so we've put more money into the economy, as a result of which cedi liquidity has increased. Now, the only source of financing our budget, apart from revenue, is treasury bills, because we don't have the capital market as a result of our debt suspension. And so apart from T-bills, people find convenience in investing in the dollar, in Forex. That has also affected us. But even more significant is the very IMF program we are implementing, because we have found defects in the design of the program. What am I talking about, ladies and gentlemen? So the IMF program imposes a limit on what we call the intervention budget. The Bank of Ghana, the central banks of every country intervene when your currency is weakening. And so whilst the central bank has targets in terms of the reserve build-up, there are also limits on how they can intervene. And so as I speak to you, the Central Bank of Ghana, the Bank of Ghana, has exceeded its reserve accumulation target, but they cannot put more than 80 million US dollars monthly onto the market for intervention. So you have reserves, yet you cannot put it on the market, and your cedi is suffering. That is another problem we are faced with. But the good news is that we are negotiating with the IMF, and soon we will get some way out to allow us to increase budget intervention so that we can strengthen the cedi. But also speculative activities are rife on our market, particularly the Forex Bureau market. Because I do not understand why the spread between the bank rate and the Forex Bureau rate is so wide. Something really is happening on the Forex Bureau market. And the Bank of Ghana, working with the security agencies, have begun some activity on the Forex Bureau market in order for us to crash the operations that are fueling the fall of the cedi. Ladies and gentlemen, growth. I have said recently that the rebound in our economy has been unprecedented. Very unprecedented. Because when you are implementing a fiscal consolidation program, as we are doing, and at the same time, you are implementing a debt restructuring program, your economy cannot grow more than 1%. You are doing fiscal consolidation, growth suffers. You are doing debt restructuring, investments are not coming in. The history of many countries that have gone through this show that you cannot grow more than 1%. And this was why the IMF and Ghana agreed that we could only grow at 1.5% last year. But as we were told by earlier speakers, we defied the odds. We grew at 2.9%. We almost doubled the target for the year. And this year is even more surprising. First quarter, as we were told, 4.7% growth against a target of 3.1%. And this growth, really, since 2020, the first quarter of every year, we've not grown by 4.7% except this quarter. And this growth, particularly, was fueled by industry. In the past, the growth we recorded were from services, led by services. This time round, it is led by industry. That tells me that the economic uptake, the economy is beginning to show resilience. Growth is showing that manufacturing is coming back. Because manufacturing also has come from a negative to a positive 2% in the first quarter. And when manufacturing is becoming positive, jobs will be created, more goods will come to the market, etc., etc. And so the rebound is really strong. The economy is coming around. And you have to be part of this turn around in our economy, particularly in fueling the growth of the economy. So, ladies and gentlemen, the macro stability of our economy, as is important for you as investors, is equally important to us as a government. And this is why we have put in all these efforts, and we are going to further work on this to ensure that the stability is not just stability, but it's at levels that will incentivize investment, that will incentivize growth, and that in the end will bring the much needed development our people need from their government. But there have been significant developments lately on our economy. Number one, I already talked about our IMF program, for which we are about going through a second review to pave way for the disbursement of $360 million. And that will bring to total 1.5 billion United States dollars the IMF would have disbursed to Ghana since we started the program last year. Another significant development is on the IPP side. I know some of my colleagues in Parliament are very interested in this matter. Jaja, we've been debating a lot about the negotiations that have lasted for about 6 years. I'm happy to report that last week I closed the negotiations on the IPPs. We've closed it. We have restructured the arrears of the independent power producers in Ghana, particularly the 4 major independent power producers in Ghana. That has brought us some significant haircut or discount, and that now allows us to spread the balance over 5 years or above. And so I can assure you, investors, that the problem that is facing Ghana's energy sector, we are about having control over it. ECG MD is here, and he will confirm that we will stop interruptions in power supply in order to provide reliable power so that industry can thrive, so we can support the growth efforts of our economy. Another significant development. 2 weeks ago, Ghana reached an agreement on the Memorandum of Understanding with our official bilateral creditors, seeking to restructure $5.1 billion that we owe to them. The agreement was significant in many ways, because part of the relief Ghana gets is that we will not service our debts to our official creditors. Debts due from 2023 to 2026 have been postponed to be paid after 16, 17 years. And in addition to this, we are getting a flow relief, what we call flow relief, of about 2.8 billion United States dollars. That is savings. $2.8 billion we would have paid between 2023 and 2026, which we will not pay until after 2026 and 16, 17 years later. And we will pay this at reduced interest. At very, very reduced interest, turning all those into concessional facilities somehow. Yet this morning, again, Ghana and our Eurobond holders announced a breakthrough in our negotiation. We've reached an agreement with our Eurobond holders to restructure 13 billion US dollars. The agreement is also significant for Ghana because it gives Ghana a debt cancellation of $4.7 billion. Our Eurobond holders are canceling $4.7 billion US dollars that we owe them. And in addition to this, we are making savings on the flow. What we would have paid between now and between 2023 and 2026. We have made extra savings of 4.4 billion United States dollars in debt service. So the net effect of the negotiations, the agreement we have just reached with our Eurobond holders, is so significant for our economy. It brings us so much relief. And I want to use this opportunity to thank our Eurobond holders for the concessions they've made to Ghana. They have demonstrated that they are partners in Ghana's development. When the economy is good, it brings them good returns. If it is bad for them. And so we have worked together, and that is the spirit with which Ghana has been dealing with our partners, either as development partners or as private creditors. That is the spirit. And it is with this understanding I'm inviting you also as investors. Ghana is ready for you. The economy is turning around. Macro stability is being restored. These agreements we have reached with our official creditors and the Eurobond holders also demonstrate the confidence the market has in Ghana. And therefore, do not depart from your plans and your decisions to invest more in Ghana. Let's build it together and share the returns fairly in a way that will inure to the benefits of both parties. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I've taken too much time, and I want to conclude at this stage. Once you have macro stability, growth is the next thing you must focus on. And as I indicated earlier, we have been intentional about growth because we knew we were implementing fiscal consolidation program. Therefore, we have a new growth strategy which focuses on three main pillars: foreign direct investments, private-public partnership, PPPs, and then SME growth. These are the pillars of our new growth strategy. So we still want foreign direct investment. And this is why this meeting is so important. And I've laid the foundation for you to continue to believe in Ghana and to bring your investment resources to Ghana. But in addition to this, public infrastructure spending has been too high. And we think that the time has come for the private sector to participate in public infrastructure development. Roads, railway lines, aviation facilities, etc., etc. And so my ministry has decided to establish PPP units in all ministries and departments and agencies of government. So that if you have 100 MDAs, then you have 100 contact points for the purpose of soliciting proposals from the private sector and evaluating those proposals. At the moment, there is only one unit, PPP, within the Ministry of Finance. And you can understand the delays in evaluating PPP proposals. We are changing it such that every ministry, department, agency will have a PPP unit. So you have multiple contact points with the private sector. And once the MDAs have evaluated proposals, the Ministry of Finance will just be interested in whether the proposed project will have fiscal impact. If it doesn't have fiscal impact, we're going to pass it for the PPP project to be implemented. This, we think, will fast-track our relationship with the private sector as far as PPPs are concerned, so that we can offload a significant portion of our public infrastructure spending to the private sector in order for us to grow the economy faster. SMEs, a lot of you who invest in Ghana are also into SMEs. And the data shows that SMEs dominate our market. And so recently, I've been describing our economy as an SME-led economy. Because that's what the facts say. 92% of all registered companies in Ghana are SMEs. 80% of the jobs created in Ghana are from SMEs. And SMEs contribute 70% of our growth, our GDP. So any government that is serious about growing the economy cannot take your eyes off SMEs and the contributions SMEs make to the economy. And so we are becoming intentional about focusing on SMEs. And therefore, on July 16th, His Excellency the President will launch a new ambitious SME program in Ghana that will seek to provide more resources to SMEs, more training and capacity building to SMEs, so that they can lead the growth of our economy. And we are determined to do this in order to grow the economy faster. But to do all this requires that the ease of doing business in Ghana is improved. Mr. Yofi Grant is always on my neck. How can we improve on the ease of doing business? Your GRA, he tells me, Ghana Revenue Authority, is giving me problems. So we are sensitive to this, and we are working to embark on a tax reform. His Excellency the President has asked me to lead a tax reform program in Ghana. And we are going to bring about tax reforms that would take away the several laws that we have and rather harmonize, so that we can simplify the laws, we can simplify the tax systems. But in doing this also, the port of Ghana, the main entry point of Ghana, has become problematic, and investors tell us. We want to resolve it. And so I have announced, and we are working on it, that we will have a one-stop shop point at the Tema port, so that you don't have to go to the Standards Authority for clearance, and then you go to Food and Drugs Authority for clearance, and then you go to Customs for clearance. We want to end it, so we can have a one-stop shop solution where you can go and get all the clearance at a go. We are further digitalizing our tax system, so that, for example, we begin to have faceless assessment, tax assessment. Just as we want to make it easier for you, we also know the risk of having face-to-face assessment because of the exercise of discretion by tax authorities. And so the ease of doing business is serious. We are working at it. Recently, we had a meeting with all the regulators in Ghana to sensitize them why we should remove the bureaucracies, why we should bring efficiency to bear on their work, why we should reform the regulations, why we should make the environment enabling, so that business people find it easy to do business and to pay their taxes. And so we have the revenue that we need, so we can finance our budget, we can bring the development that our people need. On this note, I thank you very much for the opportunity.